Good evening. Are we ready to get started?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let's start with the meeting of the Finance Committee, Monday, February 10th, at 6 p.m., and we'll start with a roll call. Clerk, please call the roll.
Sure. Member Fisher?
Here.
Member Rappin?
Here.
And Chair Ryder?
Here.
All right, you have a quorum.
First item of business is our approval of minutes from, November 25th. That's a while ago now. Okay. November 25th. Did anyone have any corrections or comments about these?
Other than Stephen being spelled with a V, I'm good.
Sorry.
Sorry. Has that changed recently?
No, it is not. That's good. Don't tell my mom.
Okay. Glad we caught that. Any other changes? Taryn spelled with a Y? Yes, spelled with a Y. Susan with no Z. Okay. With that, I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, item number 3, non-agenda items and visitors. The Finance Committee allocates 15 minutes at this time for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the committee on any matter not listed on the agenda. Do we have anyone here? Is anyone online?
No, ma'am.
Okay, then moving on to item 4, business discussion items. 4A is a review of the budget calendar. Bettina, are you reporting on that?
Sure. So included in the packet was the most recently revised budget calendar. It just goes through the process from December 4th through the 28th, and by law, we have to approve it by May 1. So this meeting is to review the schedule, review the general operating budget, and give an overview of CIP, capital improvements, that directly links to some of the transfers and the fund balance and general fund. So we might not necessarily get into the details and the weeds of all the projects, but it's to establish the link and kind of determine where we want to go and how much funding we need or would like to make. Second meeting, we'll go through the usual full capital, full project review, fee schedule, operating water rate analysis, and the pay plan. And then the rest is just tentative budget hearings and approvals through the village board. Is there any questions
Okay.
on the
That's why we
schedule?
have 2 meetings in February. All right, okay.
And also,
It's my
right now, it looks like we'll probably end up canceling that second meeting in March, right? This is always tough to get that one done, so this schedule works with that, too. Can't assume,
I see, but if we have to schedule to cancel the second meeting in March due to,
it doesn't change
Absences?
anything we're planning
No,
right
because
now.
the document would still be available for public inspection. It would still be in Dropbox for you to review by the date that we've indicated, and
Yeah.
then we'd just move forward in April.
Yep.
If
I
it's
see.
canceled.
So that March 24th meeting, tentative budget available for public inspection, that would still
Doesn't
happen?
require a board meeting.
I
Yep.
see.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
So one way or another, we're on schedule to have a public hearing on April 14th, 2025. Everybody mark your calendars. And
Already March, I'm sure.
April 28th, the board discusses and finally adopts the budget ordinance. And then, May 1st, we have a new fiscal year.
That's right.
Hard
Happy
to
New Year.
believe. Yeah. 2026, I barely got used to 2025, so, okay. Thank you. Is that all with respect to item 4A?
Yes.
Okay, item 4B then, review of the general fund.
So without getting into detail on every department, unless someone has a specific question related to those departments, just a review as the memo stated. For revenues, property taxes saw a 4% reduction, which was related to the police pension fund change. Sales tax, an 8% increase, just to realign with historical values, because budgeting a little bit lower than we should have been. And that number still may be very conservative, based on what we're doing currently.
And that number's larger than the property tax number, right?
Right,
So,
yeah. So, and then commuter parking lot, 75% increase, so we're just seeing fluctuations back to pre-COVID. It's not a lot of
Good news.
dollars.
Yeah.
But it's coming back. The rental income is related to the cell towers, so we lost
We lost a carrier.
a
Yeah.
carrier,
There's consolidation going on, and it's,
yeah.
what can you do?
So we have that change. And as far as expenditures in the departments, there weren't a lot of changes. A lot of things remain the same, but highlighted a few of them. There's an increase in the transfers in the admin fund, so that's related to stormwater utility and capital, and that's what we're tied to what we're going to review later. And an increase in medical insurance, and that's partially due to an omission from prior year of one of the employees that wasn't included, and the normal rate increases. Community development, there's a 20% reallocation. We have a finance department employee that's serving as an engineering tech part-time for 20% of his salary, so we've reallocated to community development. Fire, there's increases related to equipment purchases. They need new light bars. They've been patching and repairing, and now they're beyond that because the equipment's dated, so they have to buy new ones. So that's what that's about. And then the transfer to the vehicle replacement fund from the fire department's budget is increasing to plan for future purchase or lease of a fire truck.
It's getting close to time to have a
Right, so that's out there, which.
very, very expensive truck that takes 4 years to deliver.
Right, 4 years to deliver, you know, you've got to put your order in for a year, so then we have some planning time and looking at how that's going to be financed, but to start putting some money towards that.
But that must not be news, right? That we
It's
have
been
to
in
do
the
this.
earth,
Been there, but we haven't made a solid contribution dedicated to it.
Is that how we do it? We do, like, when we foresee one coming, we ramp up and then we ramp back down, and one
there
might.
is an ebb and flow to it.
There is an ebb and flow, and typically it is smoothed out, but this is such a large one, and
And the
we've
prices
pushed
have
it.
gone up dramatically.
And we need to increase it just to be fair to the fund. And then in Public Works overall, there were changes to salaries related to allocation and employee responsibilities to just realign some people that were in forestry or not, or streets that should have been, but no real,
So no new FTEs, programmatically, no changes.
no.
So it just comes down to some tweaks, and most of it is, as you might imagine, involves capital, right? What are we gonna think, what are we gonna be able to get done? What are we gonna get permitted from other agencies? And that's where we thought we would spend a lot of time today, if there's not a lot of questions, is jumping into the capital plan and talk about how that impacts, or we believe will impact the fund balance. I think there's new information that we recently have heard from the Stormwater Management Commission on how money's gonna flow on the deep tunnel project that we wanna share with you, and how that may or may not impact our cash flows. And so,
So I'm glad to dive into the capital, and I have a few questions about the charts here. I don't think it's capital, but
Please.
we just discussed it
dive in. Yep.
briefly. On the page that's 10 of 31, general fund summary of expenditures by department. I just wanted to go a little bit closer in some of this. So administration goes up by 1 million. Can you just restate what it is that,
The administration department is where the transfers are booked from general to capital or stormwater utility, or any other, you know, fund that we have. So that's what that big number is, because we're bumping up to 1.5 million transfers to those respective funds, or we're going to contemplate that.
that makes sense. The next major change is police sworn down by 168. What do we attribute that to?
So, over budgeted prior year, that's what the down is. 'Cause
Okay.
We were unsure of what those increases in the patrol and the.
It's not been a reduction in staffing?
Not at all, no.
No, it's new shift, new
New
12-hour
shift.
shift. We're
Right.
living in that new world.
And several people, you know, we have people that are in earlier steps in the pay grade that we didn't have before.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So the next one that goes up is that 260 for fire. Is that have to do with the big new truck or something else?
So it's related to the capital lines the capital purchases for their light bar equipment, and
I see.
also partially to the extra contribution of our fund,
Okay.
both of those things.
And then next major change is 85,000 to streets lights. That's negative. That's down by 85.
So all these changes in the Public Works departments are related to salary
see.
allocation changes, and then the normal, 3% contractually. So you're gonna see some weird ebb and flows there.
I see. So it's about nets out, though, for the Public Works Department.
Right.
Then the other major change that's red, it's not just in parentheses, but it's red, so it drew my attention.
Sorry.
Is the police pension. So last year, about this time flies, we had kind of a long discussion about several items. We had a couple of bad years in terms of investment results. This year was very, very different. But we are nonetheless, I saw somewhere, I don't think it's this packet, at 56% funded, even with, even with a strong return, we're still at 56. I also noted, I think it was in the police pension board packet, that we are still at a 7% discount rate, and we had a great deal of discussion around that last time. So I want to understand that we'd even be less funded if we were at a 6.75 or even a 6.5, as some of our sister communities are at. So we wouldn't even be at 56 if we were at that discount rate.
If we had used that discount rate in the allocation, in the calculation, the contribution would have been higher. So it necessarily wouldn't have changed.
Oh.
It wouldn't have changed your funding ratio. It probably would have been the same or real.
I see.
It would have just increased the amount.
Yes, so 56, is 56 where we will be after this contribution, or is it where we are now?
That's where we were as of April 30th, 2025.
Okay. All right, so a couple of,
Sorry.
I thought so.
24.
Lose track of
Yeah.
time. So I felt strongly that we need to be making a better effort to fund the costs of what we are expending now, rather than put them off to other new generations, the next generation, right? So we have a target of getting to 2040. By 2040, we're supposed to get to 100%. We've targeted 95% because we are, I don't know, optimistic that we'll find another way to get that last 5%. I'm not sure. But we've always that 95% target to get to the 100% is what we've always done. That's not a change, right?
Yeah, I mean, that has not changed.
Okay. So we're targeted to get to 95% funded by 2040. The number we're presented with is targeted to do that. Why is it 155,000 less than what we budgeted? And I know the budgeting is not an exact science, but I'm trying to understand why we saw such a decrease from what we expected.
Well, from a budget perspective, I'm literally just taking a percentage and making a good faith estimate. You know, and actuarially, there's a whole lot more in the calculation. So why it went down, changes related to tier 1 and tier 2. We have mostly tier 2. As we discussed earlier, there was one of the annuitants that passed away, so that reduces the number in the fund that we're paying. And that's really how the calculation works. And yes, they did approve a reduction to the rate of return, and that will be part of next year's request for the levy.
Okay, so it's as I understand it, since we're levying
In arrears.
in arrears, right, we ought not apply the 6.75% for this year. Because if we did apply the 6.75%, it wasn't approved in time for us to levy it last year,
Right.
I guess,
That's
right?
true.
So,
I asked them for a rough number. That one packet that you referenced prior to the meeting showed a calculation.
it does have it. It has
for
it.
the 2024 data. I can ask for similar information for the current year's, data that we have for this valuation to see what the difference may have been approximately.
They have it. Let me pull it up. It is in that packet that the pension board had on page, and there's a number circled on page, looks like page 15.
It's using the prior year's data, though, 2023.
Well, it's the number that we have. It's 1221165 is what they've circled.
Right.
So isn't that what's in the
No, so
New
that was-
budget?
That was the 23 number.
Oh,
So they were just doing a calculation just to show us, hey, if you'd have done this last year, this is what you would have paid.
I see.
And the current year number, they didn't even have calculated yet. But I could ask them for this calculation for this year's numbers, and you would see what the difference.
Well, as with every budgeting process, it's not as if there's unlimited funds, we just have to go find another 155. But I think it's important to me that when we expend funds, we are properly accounting for the cost of spending them. And we're spending the dollars by employing a certain number of police this year and years past that we know we're going to have to pay, and we're only 56% funded right now. So when I saw that number, I understand how we got to the budgeted number was not an exact science. When I saw it coming down so much, 155, it seemed to go backwards. In fact, I think the number we're budgeting for this coming year looks to be lower than what we paid last year.
That's true. Last year we paid 1,221. This year it's 1,215. So yeah.
Just a few $1,000s lower. And that was also based on the 7% discount rate?
Yes.
Okay. So eventually, we're going to get to 6.75 discount rate, but we're not making really any progress toward getting toward 2040. Better funded than we are,
We moved in the right direction from last year.
because the market moved.
Incremental, yeah, well.
Because the market did what?
That's a big indicator, right? And I expect this year, given the market, it's been pretty decent. Should be pretty good.
1 year in,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so hope is our strategy?
No, we're following the guidance from an actuary. I mean, that's what they're doing.
Okay. Well, that same actuary just told us last year that we were being conservative, when in fact we aren't being conservative with a 7% discount rate. We have a very small pool over which to spread risk. 1 year, somebody dies early. The next year, somebody lives 20 years longer than expected. We have a very small pool, and a group that small, it's not conservative to make a hopeful prediction in terms of our discount. Now, I think we've solved it going forward, and I appreciate that I have more to learn about where all we need to spend the money other than the police pension, but it continues to concern me that we think we're doing the right thing and we're not paying for services. We're buying this today. We're expecting our children to pay them. So, end of speech. I would like somebody to look at this carefully, because
Yeah.
56% funded in 15 years to accomplish it, we need to be making better progress than what we are making. So,
I mean, you could create new policies or practices to say at the end of the fiscal year, we'll do a sweep of, check the number. If there's money that hasn't been spent, that will earmark that for next year's investment. You can come up with ways to plan.
I would like to find a way to plan for
Or
pension
aggressive
payment.
investment, yeah.
Well, what I'd like to plan for is actually know how much it costs to employ the number of police we have, rather than, well, today we paid this in, police sworn dollars, but we have this unknown liability out here, and don't worry about it, kids, we'll pay for it someday, that isn't accounted for in terms of what decisions we're making. And the police pension is it's not going away. It's a reality. It's just like ignoring a whole cost of doing business in that area that is significant. I mean, it's a significant part of our budget.
It's the tax levy, right?
Yeah, it is. So there's more for me to learn here.
We need to bring the actuary back, or an actuary back.
Yeah, somebody who doesn't tell me our assumptions are conservative. Okay, end of speech. Go on.
I do think it would be I mean, we're never going to hit the bullseye with this, right? It is a guessing game. The best thing to do for me is at the end of the year, when we have extra money that can go into the general fund, make a decision whether we want to sweep it into the police pension fund.
That, I think this year definitely is called for, because we know we have a lower or a higher discount rate than we ought to have.
We look at it relative to all of our other priorities at that time and make a decision.
Yeah, our priorities for what we want to spend today is always going to be higher than what needs to be spent in 15 years from now. So, okay, thank you. My term is almost over. You can find somebody else to do this job.
May 1st?
May 1st. My term as finance chair.
It sounds like you're fully informed, though.
Yeah, just when you got smart.
Yeah, right.
I really want to get to the capital. I only had two very small questions. It was on parks, parkways, and ravines, and sewers. Everything else, the numbers, the changes are so small. Those two just have kind of salary and insurance things that are material enough, just their strategy. I don't know if there's new employees or promotions or changes in insurance.
I'm sorry, for which departments?
Parks, parkways, ravines, and PW, I think.
And sewers. Just,
Yeah. Which I think is just reallocation of dollars.
It is
Oh, that's just
reallocation. And if
reallocation.
you-
Yeah.
The subtotal for
We haven't
public
added any
works,
bodies,
at the
yeah.
bottom, it's a 1.2% change.
What page are you on?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's the general fund summary of expenditures by department, so it's towards the beginning.
Oh, it's the same one.
And the subtotal for Public Works kind of summarizes all those department and compares the budget that we requested last year to this year and 1.2% change, total of 39,000. So I did a lot of reallocating and
Oh, it's
in
forestry.
salaries. And when you do that, it also reallocates their insurance, their life insurance, their debt, medical, everything kind of follows suit with the salary spread, so to speak. So that's what a lot of those ins and outs are. And we did have some new employees, so that's why it's only 1.2%, because they're at a lower starting step than what we had in prior years. I think there's two new guys, pretty much.
okay, but just by way of example, in forestry, sorry, that was the one. Salaries are up 35,000, medical insurance is up 31, so 61. Is that a reallocation, or did we change resources?
So it's a reallocation. You
So does that
typically
mean
have-
somebody who's in that role is getting paid different than they were the year before?
No, it's, somebody left, for example, Bob Hurdle, who used to be the forester. and we- Retired, and we replaced him with an employee and didn't allocate their salary correctly and put most of them in streets or sewers, and now it's me correcting.
Got it, because they wear
based on-
multiple hats.
Right,
Yes,
it's
got
me
it.
correcting.
Okay.
To
what I
match up
think-
with their duties.
With their duties more.
Super,
So it isn't, that's why if you look at the last line, the net number, that's really the total
the
increase.
1.2.
Subtotal for Public Works.
Good question.
Okay, fair enough. I'm ready for capital. Taryn, anything before we go to capital?
No, I'm good, thanks, though.
It's great tee up with the police pension and competing interest.
Right, because it does flow.
Okay,
It does flow into how we need to.
good. I want my sewers too. So,
What else you want?
Question, do you want to work block one? Because that'll be, I do, I know.
well, okay then.
So the sheet that's left on the table in front of you has an update compared to the one in the packet, that being line number 26 is crossed off, 300,000 for sanitary sewer, based on some of the reimbursements for the work that we're doing that's grant-driven
For 1 year.
for 1 year. That will be removed if we come to
And that, so for
consensus.
example, this is, and we'll get into why, but we're gonna be juggling a lot of capital projects at the same time, and we're trying to manage to be sure that we can manage our cash flow and also maintain our policy goals when it comes to the fund balance, or as close as we can do that. And so there were some situations, conservatively budgeting, what might be something in case of glass we would need to break and remove. So it could be the IRF fund investment that year.
changed
It
that.
could be, this sand sewer here was the easiest example to draw upon to show you that should things not flow divinely,
Sewers, it ought to, yeah.
we sure hope it does. But we essentially, we took the capital projects, we reevaluated them, looked at them and said, where should these flow? And this is staff's recommendation based on that, and also updated some cost based off what we know. And probably the biggest project in here is stepping on the gas to do the deep tunnel project. And that is because money will evaporate if we don't take the money now. We always imagined that we would be doing the deep tunnel incrementally because it's such a large-scale project. And we found some clear, Jeff, you're much better at the details of this and poetically sharing.
Yeah, maybe back up
Right.
to, yeah.
Start with the money a little bit more?
Yeah, well-
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Drew's laughing at me.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Jeff. So a couple components, in the capital fund, we have, I'll just go broad and he'll get into the weeds a little bit more. We have block one, budgeted for $1 million. We have, Green Bay Road and the bridge, at $570,000, and some miscellaneous projects that add up to $285,000. So, with fund balance totals from this year to last year, we need to fund an extra $200,000, which isn't bad for capital projects, because we've been sweeping in $500,000 or $650,000 for a couple years now, so makes up that differential for the capital fund. That's in FY '26. FY '27, we see the completion or additional money for Green Bay Road and the bridge at $1.3 million, miscellaneous projects at $400,000, so we sweep $500,000 in to get us through that year, which leaves the fund balance at about $72,000 in the general capital fund. Then simultaneously, we have the stormwater fund project going on in another fund, and that's the tunnel project. And because I'm not sure, and we can get into the findings, but I'm not sure when the reimbursement will happen or how much we need to put out in which year, I took a good guess. So $2 million in the first year, with revenue at about $825,000, adding to fund balance that we already have, because we've taken in 2 years of that stormwater utility fee, brings us to, and the general fund transfer of $1 million gets us to $1.5 million as a fund balance after we've spent the $2 million for the tunnel in that year, based on the scenario that I've outlaid. The second year, we have another $1.9 million to spend on estimated stormwater tunnel charges, and we also get that revenue of $825,000. So we don't need a transfer from general for that year, and we end the year with about $460,000 in fund balance in the stormwater utility fund. So I don't know, you want Jeff to speak to the reason why?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
if it's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
So Lake County gave us an award for, I think it's $2.7 million for the viaduct storm sewer project. They keep about $300,000 as their fee to administer that money, so it leaves about 2.4. Originally, they planned on getting it from ARPA funds, and that has changed, and now they're getting it from DECIO, from a state grant. And that changes the terms of it a little bit. One positive is now it needs to be spent by pretty much the end of October 2026, as opposed to sometime in 2025. So that gives us more time to do the project. The negative is the way you get reimbursed through DECIO is a quarterly request versus a monthly. And there are some other things in that program where they require a higher level of BEP, Business Enterprise Program, which is, I don't want to oversimplify, but it's basically women-owned and disadvantaged businesses. If you meet that goal, you get reimbursed more quickly. If you don't, let me back up a little bit. The counties administer, I think it's 14 projects under this program, and they have to meet that goal in aggregate. So the people who meet the goal in that program are going to get reimbursed more quickly. The ones who don't are going to have to wait. We plan on writing our specs so that they have to meet that goal. We will see if that drives the bid price up quite a bit or not, but it's 28% goal. So if we put that in our bid, and we're going to take bids late spring, early summer, for construction that would probably start in September, go through the end of the season, and then start up again in the spring and go through next summer. And that is a project that would start at Lake Michigan and end at the intersection of East, North, and Moffett Avenue. The $2.4 million from the county is enough to get pretty much halfway between Maple and Moffett, and then the other 1.5 would be our funds from our stormwater utility, would get us to Moffett, which is a more logical stopping point in the first phase. So we feel like that $3.9 million project is the right project to bid. The $2.4 million could be, if we meet the BEP goals, it's like 4 to 6 months, they're saying, for reimbursement. We have not seen the actual IGA in writing yet. That's supposed to come any week now. We've been told that for a little while, but I know some other communities are getting their IGAs right now, so we think we'll get it hopefully before March. To see the exact language on that, if you don't meet the BEP goal, it could be 12 months or a little more to get reimbursed. So the original plan was we'd only have to float pretty much a month or two at a time, a few $100,000 to get reimbursed till you run out of the $2.4 million from the county, and then we spend our own $1.5 million at the end. In this way, we're going to be, at least $1 million, I would think, at points waiting for reimbursement. So that's Bettina's problem, has been trying to figure out how that cash is gonna flow when we have to essentially float the money, and then the county gets it from the state, and the county will give it to us. So that has been a big change in the past few months, is how the reimbursement's gonna happen and how fast. And like I said, we do need to see it in writing from the county, but that's what they've told us it is. So that project, like, that impacts cash flow quite a bit. And that's where, I guess the other thing, a lot of our grant-funded projects are 80/20 or some percent, where we're only paying a percent, because this is a fixed grant. Any overruns or any over higher prices is all gonna be more village money, and obviously if the bid is good, it's to the good for us then, and money. So that's where we have a $300,000 line item for sanitary sewers, but I said we could probably just hold off on that and see where our bids go and see where the money looks like before we trigger that. That's more of an annual program. There's nothing broken that we have to fix right now, so it
But
would.
if something breaks, where do we get the money?
A break is usually about $10,000 in
I
the
see.
sand sewer, so we probably would pull that out of the
Contingency fund.
contingency.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's obviously very rare.
But some, yeah, go ahead. please.
Most of our sanitary problems, if we have a big rainstorm, there's a couple backups. We should be, barring something catastrophic, okay in delaying that for at least a few months, just to make sure. Like I said, if we bid the storm sewer project and the bids come a couple $100,000 to the good, then maybe we're comfortable going ahead with that contract for sewer lining to work on the sand sewer system. And if not, maybe we just kind of wait until we know that the cash flow is going to keep your fund balance the way you want it. So that is the one project really on here that, waiting 6 months or a little more isn't really going to harm anything.
You want to talk about some of the other assumptions for the fund balance?
Like what?
Block one, how block one's funded, and how,
Oh, well, it's in, so, yeah. Okay. So if you look at that, capital project 15-year summary sheet that, is on your desk or was part of the list, basically the focus on all the fund balance, even though it's general fund, but, because we're sweeping from general into these capital project funds, it's what's listed in the capital project fund and the water utility fund. So what Drew's talking about is, the block one for $1 million, that's part of what would be included in this fund balance reduction, along with the stormwater utility
at that value, which means,
at that value.
assuming we're not getting grant funded, and that
Right.
you guys want to do that next fiscal year.
Yeah, that number, even though it says it's grant funded, that's assuming that we don't receive the grant, that we just go ahead with the $1 million block one
And
project.
Jeff, I don't know if that number, we talked about how that's a pretty,
It's pretty solid, he said,
oh, okay.
right?
Alright.
You did? Yeah. Then it also includes, like I said earlier, the Green Bay Road reconstruction and the bridge, and some other, what do we have at the bottom, Jeff? The Ped Bridge? Just planning, and then the Birch culvert improvements,
Yes.
yeah. There are things that, as we move to the next meeting, that I'll include that will kind of, that are also areas that could be tweaked or changed for the sake of if you wanted to realign where money's being spent, that being the vehicle replacement fund. So currently, I have that increase, typically we're around $380,000 a year in that contribution, and I have it up to $560, that being related to the fire transfer. Now, we could hold off, there are other options that fire's looking into related to leasing, and, related to, you do an upfront payment, lease for so many years, and then have the option to either purchase or re-up your lease. There's all kinds of different scenarios that we haven't gotten specific info on yet. So that number could change, we could reduce it, and that might then go back to capital or other areas, that
Free it up,
sand sewer, would free up some other funds that we could use for other things. Also, and the revenue projections that I used are based on a percentage of increase from the prior budget, but it's fluid, it could change based on car dealerships based on what happens. It could be higher than what we have in here, which is typically what has happened,
And the other thing
because
that
I'm conservative with it.
we didn't show any grant, but we've applied for Protect Grant again for the stormwater project based off. Well, we are planning to apply. We had a conversation with IDOT and they said, are you applying again? We said, should we? You know, and so we did, we will. We've put in for ITEP funds for a couple of different projects, the Green Bay Road Ped Bridge to North Chicago, that trail project for the balance of that, as well as the Block 1 money, and we'll know in March, probably.
Right.
And so those could be other
That
good
could change
news that
this
could blow
picture.
in and say, hey,
I have a question. So, when it comes to the cash flow from the county money, is there a scenario where it doesn't happen or that we need to plan for?
I think there could be a scenario where it's delayed.
Like, yeah,
I think we need to look at the language of the IGA when they provide it, just to make sure that we are completely covered on that.
we've dealt with Decchio in the past on a lot of grants, and they can be really flexible. Like sometimes there'll be seed money and sometimes there won't. So we don't know yet, and SMC is learning more. I mean, this is all very fluid, so.
State money is not federal, so
right.
everything going on right now, that's a little.
It's actually,
That's
suddenly
kinda
we're
what I'm-
solving.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
SMC has held off on these grants until that money hits their bank. They promised this for more than a year, and they've been very concerned about not until that money actually hits their bank account, because they don't want to get left out.
They don't get, strung out either, right?
sure, yeah.
So. Here's I guess the other thing is, there is a smaller project for the deep tunnel that we can do that we would rather not do. We can go up to Maple, right? We can break it, if it's a smaller bite, there's different ways to do that.
Which wouldn't mean we couldn't come back for the bigger bite or just.
Right.
Right, yeah, we were just saying from a method and means, it makes sense to go to Moffett.
Yeah.
Can I ask a broader question? So just looking at the fund balance fluctuation, so as a board, and the time that I've been on this board, we've been in a good spot with the general fund. And as we look out into the future years, because there's 4 really major things happening, 3 and then a less major. And they're all clustered, and we haven't had these big things before. So my first question is are we just striking while there's an opportunity? It sounds like there's only one of these that really has a grant. Why are so many of these big projects clustered in a 3 or 4 year period?
Well, 2 of them, the Green Bay Road work is one project that's grant-driven, 80/20, right?
Which is, I didn't quite catch what you said.
The Green Bay Road project?
Green Bay Road.
80/20, we're only paying 20%.
Okay, so that money is in place, we need
And
to use it. or
that got on that path years ago. We got in line,
Yeah.
waited our turn to get that money, and
We would have liked to have done that a couple of years ago, but the grant didn't come through until this cycle. So it's timely because there are issues with the bridge that are gonna get worse. And
Yeah,
if you've driven the road, you know there's issues with the road.
yeah.
So we have to do that, I think, as soon as we can.
Okay, and then the water distribution system
you mean the,
is.
It's
the-
line 20. I wanted to try to understand line 20.
separate fund? We'll talk about the waterfront in the next
Yeah, we
meeting.
haven't
Oh,
talked
that's a
about the
separate
water?
fund.
Yeah,
Okay,
That's
But-
not a big project. Water is just paved with gold, so that's,
it's just too expensive.
$1
It's
million.
very expensive infrastructure, water.
okay. And then we talked about the deep tunnel, and then the CBD is elective.
Right.
Whether hopefully we get a grant that helps us do
And
that.
in the deep tunnel one, that's the one that we again, resigned ourselves that it's gonna have to be incremental because it's such a massive project. And then as we get further west and work our way towards the viaduct, IDOT will be on board to pay their fair share.
Yeah. Okay, so this chart that shows the percent
Yes.
of fund, we'd like to be at 100%?
50 is the goal.
50.
50 is the goal. Okay, so we are going to be down, if we do all of this work, right around where the goal is.
Yes.
And then in the years that run past this, we expect to continue building it up? Or are there other large projects that are going to keep us hovering at 50? Or is that just too
So-
far out?
No, if you look at, so I went out to 2027. If you look at 2028, there's still some continuation of the Green Bay Road, right? At 400,000. and just normal maintenance, and then the salt shed replacement. So we're at 1.2 million in FY '28, which is a fairly large number compared to historical spending in the capital fund, and then after that, we taper down.
Well,
Quite a bit.
and so,
Yeah.
but to answer, I think, completely answer your question, so the CBD improvements will be done.
Yep.
There's never enough money for roads,
No.
and there's never enough money for water or storm sewer. So, but I think the village's emphasis will be putting money towards continued investment in the storm sewer system. And so that once we get the trunk line in, then you start building all the feeder straws.
Okay. So we have excess money in the fund right now. We're gonna use our chips to do some things that we think are important. We're not gonna get below our safety valve of 50%. And then when we're done here, we're gonna build that up to an even safer place. So that, in general, is a scenario I can live with. And then we can figure out within each of these what's,
Is that the idea, to build up to a safer place, or are we supposed to hover ideally around 50?
Should. We should. Ideally, we should hover around 50.
Yeah.
What I thought.
Yes, yeah. I think if you, here's what President Charlo was talking last meeting, I think he was nervous about an increased dependence, or already a dependence on a source of sales tax, which is auto related, right?
Yeah.
But what if autos went away? What happens then? Or electric car, we keep the migration change somehow impacted our sales tax revenue. It's like that could impact our fund. So communities like that, or people that, I should say, communities that, I'll say like a Schaumburg or Vernon Hills that have almost exclusively sales tax funded activities tend to have a higher fund balance policy because it is much more susceptible to shifts. So they're more conservative. They'll say our fund policy is 100% or 150% because next year it could be COVID and we get crushed, right? So we have more diversity in our revenue stream. So I think 50% is probably a reasonable amount. When I think I first got here, I think it was 30. I think it's moved to 50 over time as we've had more reliance on sales tax.
Yeah.
So,
Another reason, the timing of, as you mentioned, why are we clustering? It kind of works with FY '27 as well, because that's an MFT year. And what I mean by that is general isn't paying for the roads that year. That's an every third year event, and it happens to fall in place where we're not funding that from general, which is great for what we're adding
Yeah.
from capital perspective into the fund.
can you keep asking questions, but I'll let you guys ask any questions you have.
So I think I understand the number on line 27, storm sewer trunk, right? That's the 3.9 that
it's a deep
Jeff-
tunnel.
Jeff just talked about.
Get you to Moffett.
Yeah, it says to Moffett. I thought I heard you say, worst-case scenario, we would go to Maple, but Maple's farther east.
Starts at the lake, right?
You start west and you work, you start at the lake and you work your way west.
Oh, okay. Well, and I
Sorry.
think of deep tunnel, and I
You
think
think of the tunnel.
of the tunnel. Yeah, right. Yeah, we have to make the straw on the receiving end bigger first.
Yes.
Right.
It gets, well, I always forget now at this point, is it the same internal diameter from beginning to end, or it gets bigger at the end?
It gets a little bigger at the end.
Yeah.
Normally you do work downhill, but in this case, it makes a lot more sense to start at the lake and not, otherwise we'd be taking all the water from the viaduct, diverting onto east-north, and then trying to put it through a straw.
Yeah,
And we would
Yeah.
cause flooding. So
Yeah.
if it's gonna take multiple years to do the project, it works better to start at the bottom of the lake and then work back
Okay.
uphill.
okay. So that 3.9 we pay, but we get it back in grants? We have it
2.4 of that comes back.
2.4 of that.
1.5
But the problem is
far
it
down.
may be slower than we first.
Right,
thought.
so it comes back and goes into what fund? But it doesn't, we don't have a negative number in that same fund as it comes back into 2027 or 2028, right? When we get it back, the 2.4 back,
The
when, not
receipts-
if? Where does it,
So the
does it offset future spend in that fund?
FY '27 includes the reimbursement of the 2.4. FY '26 includes the spend of the difference.
I see, thank you.
So it is
So we,
in there
so
as far
we.
as the chart projection that I gave you.
Okay, that makes sense. So, I can't remember, are we talking about this more next?
The next meeting,
Next
yes.
meeting,
We
okay.
just want to tee up, so there's some moving parts that we just figured that we learned from the SMC, and so, but knowing that the priorities, what we think are the priorities are here, and if you wanted to change those priorities, now would be a great time to start telling us, yeah.
I'm in general alignment. I just would like to hear a little bit more about a couple of the projects. And we don't have to do it now. We can do it next time.
And I guess I'm anti-fund because I'm concerned about the CBD Block 1. That's a big number. And I think it's contingent on us getting some of that paid for? Yes, no?
We had this, the current budget has it grant dependent.
Okay,
This modification, this assumption is that the village doesn't get the grant and the village decides to do it next fall.
This fall.
Sorry, this fall.
Right, without grant fund.
Yep.
And you'll find out in March.
We hope. It's IDOT, so.
I mean, obviously, if I removed that $1 million portion of capital, it would change those fund projections a lot.
And what would the grant, what dollar amount would the grant be?
Trying to remember. Do you
Over
have it, Jack?
500,000, kind of?
Oh, yeah, it's a big number, yeah.
I thought it was 750.
I think it's 80% of 750.
That's why I thought it was 750.
It's an 80/20.
Okay.
And there's $750 worth of grant eligible expenses in that project.
Yeah.
when are we going to need to say go on this?
On the block one? Well, that would be if we put it out to bid, because we can put it out to bid and not accept any bids. I mean, you can just say, this is what they came in, oh, it was 1, 2, it's not more,
Yeah.
or it's 6, who knows? Probably won't be 6, but.
It may impact the later farmers markets as we get into the fall. So if we're gonna do it, I'd like to let them know and try to work a plan to,
We did the fall, we did much more footprint of a project and it was late in the year, and we had the best weather ever to complete. We were rolling sod out in December. It was unbelievable. We got really lucky.
Block 1, in part, some of that has to be done, right? So we were trying to take advantage of,
Yes.
yeah, and that's
Right.
probably, normally we would do a lot of that just in the regular street program, but it's probably $300,000 just to fix all the broken sidewalks. And if you look at the staircase going down to the basement of Hansa,
Yeah.
like some of that concrete is falling out, and there's
The village.
things, and I was just walking down there today, look at some of the bluestone around there, and some of the features, they're all kind of rotting away. So there's a pretty big number, I think it's probably about 300,000, just to kind of patch it as it is and repave the street. and
my
fix the
sense is
houses.
because that feels the most elective of the things that we're doing. The others are, infrastructure things that you just kind of have to do, and
All right.
you don't necessarily get a community value out of it. Well, you don't get flooding, but it might make sense for us to bring up the design again to remind everybody.
I think that's right.
What it is we're doing and where that elective money will go. I think, based on the past, I'm very supportive of it, but I think everybody would like to see that.
And we could do that, and there are some items in there that we could defer just within that project, such
Yeah.
as some of the lighting.
Okay.
Benches.
I think socializing that again, since it's been a while, in the newsletter or something, as we prepare to, make a decision on that would be useful. Socializing it here first.
Yeah, maybe not the newsletter.
But what I'm saying is I think people need to know eventually need to know where we're headed.
Yeah. And again, you can include it in the budget, and it's a budget, right? We've amended the budget multiple times, and this is the best information we have at this moment, so.
Okay.
Was there any other questions about any of the projects? Did you have any other ones? Any other questions?
We're going to talk about the water distribution at a later date.
Next meeting.
And then the one, since we have a couple of minutes, the trunk, I seem to recall a $27 million part of that where we were bonds and, that's a much later thing. But can you just remind me about that, someone?
Yeah.
I think our last cost, that's what was 22 million for the whole thing.
Yeah.
So this would be the first, basically 4 million, is what we're talking about here, leaving the 18, which could be a bond from the utility, which we talked about, and then IDOT money, and hopefully other grants, because we've been negotiating with IDOT about how much their fair share is. We're a little ways apart from them on that still, but we're working on on that number. And
Hey,
then-
can you just remind me of the physical part of it? Like, I understand the trunk of what we're trying to do at the end of the pipe to make it bigger. Is this doing the entire pipe, or is there something more in the 22?
Give me 1 second, I'm gonna bring up a slide with the image, I think, of the project.
Image tells 1,000 words.
It's the pipe, it's also rebuilding North Avenue. Right now, it has no curb and gutter,
Yeah.
poor drainage. So we would make it into a fully improved urban street. That's part of the cost. There's some,
Is that for water flooding purposes, or is that just beautification?
it's kind of because we're ripping the whole street up anyway,
Okay.
so might as well make it
The neighbors
nice.
might appreciate that.
It is I mean, it's one of our least attractive streets, I think, just the way that it's laid out right now.
But though, that's the main two components, it's going all the way from the lake to the tunnel, and then the beautification of North Avenue, or the improvement of North Avenue. And that's
Yeah,
gonna
and there's some work on the Leondell to make that hardened for flooding, but it's mostly just because the pipe is 40 feet deep in areas. Very, very expensive.
True, that does it for me. I don't know that
Okay,
I need
okay.
to, yeah.
40 feet deep, where?
You
Where's?
come up from the viaduct and underneath, in front of the train station.
Wow.
It's
Wow, wow, wow. That's quite a dig.
Deep tunnel?
Deep tunnel.
a couple
Like
of
Boston.
massive boring pits where they're put out towing equipment. and-
Should I make a motion to adjourn?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Taryn, are you gonna be here for sure on the 24th? Because there's a chance that I won't be. February 24th, 2 weeks from now.
Oh, yeah, I'll be here.
It's 2 for a quorum on the finance.
Yes.
Recording stopped.
Sorry to pin you down like that, but I.
Thanks a lot.